this is Lady Boulay, and I hope you're having a most marvelous day. Thank you for your support. Thank you for subscribing to the channel. Please hit the notification bell so you'll know when new videos are being uploaded. Thank you for your thumbs up, for your comments, and thank you for sharing the videos. Thank you for all you do to support this channel. Well, today I'm talking about Booker T. Washington again. And the title of the video is What African American Men Could Learn from Booker T. Washington. I believe that the title is relevant for the times. Sometimes the past can inform the present and the future. Booker T. Washington was born in 1855 or 1856. He was born during the slavery days. And he served about 10 years in slavery before the institution ended. But even in slavery, he had a quest for knowledge. As he was a child of the plantation, Booker T. Washington did not grow up with his father. His father was a white man on the plantation. He wasn't even sure which one. But he grew up without a father. When slavery ended, his mother had married another enslaved man named Washington Ferguson, and they moved to West Virginia. Booker T. Washington had a hard life as a young boy, working in salt mines and in coal mines, doing the work of a man. Nevertheless, he had a thirst and a quest for knowledge, and eventually he made his way to Hampton Institute. There again, he had to work. He had a humiliating experience on the way to Hampton, several humiliating experiences, but he had to work. So he was a very humble person because he had to work his way to success. Booker T. Washington was such a great and outstanding not only student but worker at Hampton that the principal, as they called it in those days, of Hampton, General Samuel Armstrong, recommended that he come to Tuskegee to build Tuskegee Institute. Now, Booker T. Washington thought he was going to a ready-made school. And when he got to Tuskegee, he realized he was going to have to build the physical structure and put the academic plan in place. He was going to hire the teachers and gather the students. So he had to do everything. And it takes a man with a lot of compassion for other people and a will to improve the conditions of other people to do that. Because some people would have just packed their little bags and walked right out of there. But he didn't. He stuck with it. And he improved a whole race of people. So Booker T. Washington was the primary architect and builder of Tuskegee Institute, now Tuskegee University. He was an educator, a writer, an author, and an orator in his day. And he died in 1915, so we're talking about from about 1881 to 1915. He was the most celebrated, the most successful, and really the most sought after African American in the United States, even to being an advisor to presidents. Now, in today's world, Booker T. Washington is not really celebrated. He's called an Uncle Tom or a Boulay or something like that. But Booker T. Washington did something that was extraordinary. What he did was he raised a race of people who had just come out of slavery into the workforce and into the educational system. Now, I think we are going to revisit him at some time in the future and realize what he did. But I want to talk about what he did because I respect, and he is one of my heroes, one of the ancestors that I truly respect. And before I go any further, I want to say that as far as the Uncle Tom label is concerned, any African American that is very successful, that's a billionaire, or that has reached the level of national and international celebrity is an Uncle Tom on some level. because African Americans do not run this country. We don't run the politics, we don't run the education, we don't run the military, and we don't run the economy. So if we progress through those ranks, we are playing by the rules that Booker T. Washington played by. Just because somebody gets before an audience or get in front of a microphone and does big talk does not mean that that talk is backed up by anything other than something that a group of people has allowed them to do. So we're all Uncle Toms on some level if we are really successful in the United States. And you cannot help your people. You cannot help African American people if you're an African American if you don't get help from other people. It's just what it is. That's just a fact of it. So calling somebody an Uncle Tom is really disingenuous, because if you're not an Uncle Tom, if you're not networking with other people who are actually in control, then you're not helping anybody. You might have a little success yourself, but you're not helping your people. Now, having said that, I'm going to talk about some of the principles that Booker T. Washington employed that actually helped him to be successful himself and to help people who had been enslaved for 246 years, who barely had command of the language. They did not know how to navigate the system. Somebody had to help them. Somebody had to make that sacrifice. So if it meant going up north with his hat in his hand and begging the industrialists that he did network with to give money for a new building or a new dormitory or to hire new teachers, if it meant doing that, somebody had to do it. So I'm going to talk about 5 of the principles that Booker T. Washington employed that propelled him to success and made him the most celebrated and the best known African American of the late 19th and early 20th century. And I call them the 5 R's. They are respect for himself and humanity, respect for family, respect for work and any kind of work, academic or industrial or whatever kind of work, respect for education, and respect for individual and collective achievement of African American people. Booker T. Washington acknowledged in Up from Slavery that his mother was barely literate in education, academics, but she was a person of very high moral character, and she instilled that in her son. You did not hear any slanderous reports about Booker T. Washington, and I've read about him quite a bit. He was married 3 times. He valued marriage. He valued good deportment and behavior. He was clearly conservative in his personal demeanor. He was a person of very high moral character from all that we can read about him. So he had respect for himself and he had respect for others. You can tell that in how he treated others. Now, they said he was a tyrant. That is what a lot of his detractors say about him. But at the time that he moved and in the things that he was doing, he had to be straight. And sometimes being straight, some people think that means being mean or being a tyrant. But he got things done. And there is no slander. He was never arrested. Nobody accused him of stealing. And he was handling a lot of money. So I'm going to stand by the fact that he was a person of very high moral character with respect for himself. And just to clear up the 3 marriages, 2 of his wives died early. His first wife died after 2 years of marriage, and the second wife died after about 3 years of marriage. So his wives died, which was really unfortunate for him. But that was why he married 3 times, and the third wife outlived him. The second R was respect for family. Booker T. Washington spoke highly of his mother, his brother, his love for his family, and for his wives and children. And he lived that sermon as well as preached it. He was always married, and his wives were always companions to him in what he was doing at Tuskegee. He married women who could help him. So you could call him a feminist. I have said this before. In his own way, he was a feminist because he married women who brought something to the table at Tuskegee. They planned curriculums. They were assistant principals. They worked within the community. They were members of clubs and organizations. He married women who were helpful to him as well as married to him. So he was a family man. The third R, respect, was for work. Booker T. Washington believed in a person working. He taught those students at Tuskegee. He taught academics and he taught industrial education. He taught them how to farm. He taught them how to build. He taught them how to think. He taught them how to create. He taught those girls at the school how to build homes, raise children, and teach children. He was involved in every aspect of teaching them so they could go back to their communities and work to build up their communities. And he didn't have a preference for academic work or industrial work or manufacturing work. He was saying, whatever you do, do it well. But he said work. Work was his mantra. Work for African American people, because he felt like that is the only way we're going to dig ourselves out of this hole that we're in. The fourth R was respect for education, and that sort of speaks for itself. Booker T. Washington and education are synonyms. He believed in the education of African American people, the former enslaved people. He knew that they knew how to work. And he knew if he put the education with the work skills, it would make for a success. And that's why he built the Negro League of Business, or the Negro Business League, so that the Tuskegee students, with their education and their business skills and savvy, would go back into their communities, build businesses, which would in turn build healthy, self-sustaining communities. He believed in combining work skills with education. And the last R was respect for individual and collective achievement. Booker T. Washington believed in the individual achievement of African Americans, but also of the collective, of the group. That, I think, is what we're missing in our leadership today. Everybody can get something on their own. It's a go for yourself kind of situation. But he was concerned about the collective. And because of that, he got himself in trouble, because in order to do collective uplift, he knew he was going to have to network with white people, because they held the power. And he was willing to do that, not for himself, because he could have made it on his own without going to New York and Boston and Philadelphia begging for money for Tuskegee. But he built a network, and some of those business ties and connections are still in play. This descendants of the people that Booker T. Washington made connections with still contribute to Tuskegee. They probably have one of the largest endowments of any HBCU because of that. But he believed in collective uplift, and for that alone, he should be remembered and respected. I think that young African American men in particular can look at his life, because this is just a smidgen of what he really stood for. Read up from slavery, visit Tuskegee, look into the life of a man who was born enslaved, without a father, who worked his way through college, graduated with honors, and went into a part of the country that he knew nothing about. He knew no one there, and he built an institution that lives to this day. Tuskegee is alive and well. The curriculum has expanded. It's bigger and badder than ever. So for young African American men, take a look at the ancestor, this particular ancestor, and see if you can draw some inspiration from his life, because he certainly lived a life well lived. Thank you for listening. Subscribe to the channel, give me a thumbs up, leave a comment, and as always, have a great day.